So welcome everyone. I'm Julie Christensen, the Community-Based Learning Specialist at Western Technical College. And I'm also a member of the UGetConnected team. Tonight we have some great guests from Kane Street Garden, GROW, the YMCA Food Forest, and WisCorps here to share information on community gardens. I will be recording tonight's event and be sharing it on the UGetConnected Facebook page for community members to view. Before we get started, I just want to let participants, although maybe it's just Kelsey at this point, know that if you have any questions throughout, or even if you guys have questions for another agency, if you're while we're talking, if you want to put it in the chat so that we see it and we can come back to it later, that could be helpful. And I think we'll just start by having each of you introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about your background and how you got into your current role. So I'm going to kind of call on people based on where you are on my screen, but we'll try to keep the agencies together. So Lee, I'm going to start with you.
Why did I have a feeling I would be the first one? So my name is Lee Walraven. I am one of the directors at the Y. For the Food Forest, Dana and I both kind of co-manage it, if you will. Dana does more of the programming, the Food Forest, although she's very brand new to that aspect of her role. COVID allowed us all to put different things on our plates that we didn't have before. So that's one of Dana's things. And my role more is kind of the management, if you will, of the Food Forest. And gosh, I don't even know how I got into my role. I've been at the Y for 10 years now, and I just kind of maneuvered in different ways through the Y in terms of health. My background is master's in clinical exercise phys, so cardiac rehab and healthcare is really my focus. So yeah, I don't know. I got here through time, I guess. I'll say that.
That's great. Dana, do you want to go next?
Yep. As Lee said, I'm Dana Bowler. I am one of the, my title is Health Interventions Director at the Y. So I oversee Livestrong, program diabetes prevention, now Food Forest. And so obviously we weren't doing much programming in the Food Forest last summer due to COVID. So looking at some different ways to get more people out in our Food Forest. It's a really cool place. So I'm excited to be on board and be here too.
Thank you. Todd, I'll have you go next. You're next on my screen.
Okay. Hi, my name is Todd Huffman, and I'm with the Kane Street Community Garden. And I started volunteering there in 2000, and I volunteered there for years. And then I was hired. So I've been working for Hunger Task Force since 2004. And my job is to be kind of in charge of the garden. It's a full-time job in the summer for 7 months. So I guess I just got into it. I love gardening. I love going there. Doesn't really feel like work. I have kind of a hobby farm at home and even got certified organic. And it isn't nearly as much fun to do it by yourself. So it's just kind of a place I love going to, and that's what I do.
Thanks, Todd. Emily, will you go next?
Sure. I'm Emily Post, and I'm the administrative manager at WisCorps. And I started here part-time about 5 years ago, and then became full-time. And then how I got involved in the garden was I just really wanted to learn how to grow things, because up until then I had killed every plant that I had tried to nurture. So I got involved in it just for my own benefit, and then just discovered that it was my happy place. And our conservation program manager just got too busy to keep up with managing the positions for the garden, so I took it over.
I'm like you, Emily, or like you were. I tend to kill things, but
every year I get a little better.
Be outside though, so. Autumn and Carrie, do you want to talk about GROW and how you got started there, your roles?
Absolutely. I guess I'll go first. My name is Kari Braley, and that's okay. And I'm actually the executive director of GROW. I am newer in this position, about 6 months, but I was a co-founder. So started 2002, just a conversation with another friend of mine. We were parents, kids in school, and I had actually come from an education background. I taught for about 12 years before that in elementary school. And I was taking some time off with my children, and we started this conversation and got community members, teachers, principals, medical people involved, and it kind of just grew. And so now we help establish and maintain and do programming in school gardens. And we have some other exciting things that are happening that we can kind of talk about later. But I guess, yeah, so I was co-founder, and then I actually was a teacher in the programs for about 5 years until I moved into this position. So yeah, exciting times. So Autumn.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Autumn. I am a public health preceptor from UWL. It's basically like a full-time intern. So I work 40 hours a week. I started in February, and I will be with GROW until the middle of May.
Great, wonderful. Thank you all for introducing yourself. It's always nice to see and hear how people got to where they are today. I think particularly with community gardens, it's kind of interesting, the path. So next I just kind of like for each of you to talk a little bit more about what your agency does. Some of you kind of mentioned things while you were introducing yourselves, but if you want to go into a little bit more detail about that, that would be great. And anybody can chime in here. I'm not going to call on anyone.
Well, I don't know. Should I go? Okay.
Sure.
I'll start talking. Or yeah, I'll go first. Okay. Well, yeah, our garden is operated by the Hunger Task Force of La Crosse, which you might gather is a hunger group. And we have two big operations. One is the garden and one is the food bank. And there's way over 100 agencies that get the food in a 7-county area. I wish I could tell you, I should know how much they picked up. It was certainly way over 1 million pounds of food in terms of the food bank. They pick up food all over, even hours away. So the garden goes really well together because our extra food can go back to the food warehouse and be delivered. So I guess we're talking about gardening, but we come at it really as a hunger group. Our garden is large, and we have a target to try to raise 30,000 pounds and then give that food away to the volunteers and to others. It's free food, and but first we have to grow it. So I highly encourage people to help before they take home food, but we do give food to everyone. You know, there's older people and maybe some that can't help too much, but yeah, we're a hunger group. And then we also, we do 3 classes every week in the summer for kids and adults. But I think we're mostly like learn by doing. If you come over any day, you'll learn what we're doing. It's not as much as a formal curriculum. So we want to teach people how to garden too. And that's all.
Kari, do you want to?
Sure. So with GROW, our mission is to connect children to healthy food and nature. And really, we were just doing strategic planning, and we're looking at actually changing that to more youth, because we're starting to move into working with middle school, high school, and now even with our new connection to Western, we just feel like maybe that is more of what we do. So we help establish school gardens. If people are interested, if schools are interested, we partner with them, and we help to actually build the garden. And then one of the biggest pieces is that we do provide programming. And so, we felt our kind of main goal was that we wanted kids to experience gardens. And the reason why was because we know that children will eat healthier if they are hands-on with growing that food and preparing that food. And so that's kind of where this all came from. And because we wanted them to make choices, even if the schools were providing some healthy foods, you know, a kid's going to just throw it in the garbage if it's not something they've experienced. And so we, that's kind of where the idea of gardens kind of came along. And then we know that you can learn so many things, right? Curriculum, there's so many parts of the school curriculum that can be connected, especially, you know, science and that kind of thing, but really all areas. So we really pride ourselves in that programming because many of us are educators who are doing the teaching in there or soon to be educators and that kind of thing. And so we really, that feels like an important piece, but also just the hands in the dirt, planting, helping to maintain, and then harvesting and experiencing that food. So that's kind of where we started, and that's one of our main pieces. We also do farm experiences. Right now we partner with Deep Roots Community Farm, which is about 10 miles outside of town. And we do field trips. So schools sometimes sign up to do field trips out there. And then even we do summer camps. And so sometimes we do kind of privately run ones, but the last few years we've been able to connect with the school district and their offerings. And so we're able to provide, I think it's 8 sessions this summer, where kids that live within our school bounds are able to sign up for those, and that's free. So that's getting kids out there. They get to experience growing, but in a bigger area, but they also get to experience animals, a creek, you know, just all kinds of things. So that's another piece, is our farm programming. And then an exciting thing that's happened in this last year, despite the pandemic, we were able to, we combined forces, or we merged with Hillview Urban Agriculture Center. And they were around for a long time doing a lot with urban growing and educating. But it made some sense for us to kind of collaborate together. And so now we're under Grow. And with that, fortunately, we were able to obtain the space that they were in, which is the beautiful greenhouse space on WTC's campus. So right off of 7th there. And so this is brand new to us. We moved in there, fall, and really are trying to kind of establish what that looks like. But our hope with that, we already are growing things in there. We've done some Zoom and virtual kinds of programming from there, to schools and that kind of thing. But we hope to have more programming where field trips, kids can come in and we can do field trips there, and just do other kinds of programs for kids, maybe even in the summer. So we're developing that. But we're excited for those possibilities, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things coming up this spring. But so that's a new piece for us that we're excited about. So schools, farm experiences, and then the greenhouse are what we do, and mostly with children, but of course it can be intergenerational because of, you know, family involvement and that kind of thing. So.
Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Emily or Lee or Dana?
Sure. So WisCorps has a couple of different components to it. We have a conservation corps, and then we also do environmental education. So our environmental education programs are based mostly out of the building down at Myrick Park, the Myrick Park Center down at the bottom of the hill. And we offer a variety of programs for all ages. And then with our conservation corps program, we send what we call conservation crews out to the entire state of Wisconsin. And then we're also in a couple of national parks at Isle Royale National Park and Indiana Dunes National Park. Where our garden comes in is they used to have a little, it was much, much smaller, a little tacked on garden to the old building where they were over by the Boy Scouts out on Quarry Road. And that was just kind of a pet project of one of the board members. And when we moved into this building, we just really wanted to continue the garden because it ties into everything else. So we integrate some of our environmental education programs out there. And then we also provide some produce to our crews. So anytime we go to visit a crew, we'll pick out whatever's done, whatever's ripe out there, and bring some fresh produce to our crews.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
The why? You guys want to share?
Yeah, I can share about the food forest. So I have a connection in many ways to the food forest, and it's funny to me that in many ways that it is a priority area for me at my work. So the food forest was something that started back in 2015. And it was actually my son's mom who was working to grant fund to get the food forest started, which was gonna be a place not connected to the Y. And that kind of fell through. And eventually, as the Y was remodeling at that time in 2016, we said, let's put it at the Y. The other connection is my dad owns his nursery business and landscaping. And I grew up in a garden and grew up in a greenhouse ever since I was 5. And I swore to him every summer that I was working out there that I would never work in a garden. And here I manage a food forest. So we've had the food forest since 2016. One of the key characteristics, difference of a food forest from a community garden, food forest is heavily perennial, really relies on the perennial aspect of it. The other part that makes it a forest is that many of the plants in the food forest have a symbiotic relationship. They connect with each other. The easiest one I always talk about is strawberries and asparagus planted together, where the strawberries provide the ground cover that normally would dry out around the asparagus because it doesn't have foliage to keep from that evaporation happening. So many things throughout the food forest have that kind of relationship. And so we went into partnership with Cooley Region Ecoscapes back in 2016 for planting of the food forest and a lot of the maintenance of it. The food forest eventually is supposed to be kind of take on its own maintenance, if you will. It works off of each other, plants and different things like that. But one thing that we did find out through the years of doing the food forest is that we had to do some of our own maintenance because a food forest would look just fine out in the country and work like a food forest should. But in the city, people kind of question what was going on in the front of the building and that it was overrun or that it wasn't really actually being taken care of. And so we've invested more into kind of managing it and making it look a little bit more landscape-like, if you will. But over the summer, we'll do various programs. Sometimes we'll do what we call Wednesday Learn and Grow nights where individuals from the community can come in and we'll kind of do a workshop, if you will. Sometimes there's some weed pulling that goes along, but there's also some type of project for the night that's being worked on. Cooley Region Ecoscapes, who are phenomenal, and having Jared or Judd talk about any aspect of the food forest, you're like blown away with just how much all is in there and how it's all built together. But they also break it down in a way that you can understand and incorporate into your life. And that's one of the things that we talk about with the food forest is that the food forest we have around the Y is very large, but you can make a food forest in your yard or garden in very small aspects. It doesn't have to be that huge piece of it all. And so so we do those things to try to educate the community on how they can bring that into their own gardens or in their lawns, or get rid of their lawns and do something that's not so negative towards the environment. And then the other thing about it that we try to really share, which is one of our barriers we have sometimes, is that everything in the food forest is completely free to the community. So as you're walking by, as you're going through, you know, pick strawberries, pick raspberries, take the apples, pick the plums. You know, if anything is in there that is ripe at the time, take it. Often what we have is people get it like it's on the Y's property. Like I can't just come in there and just like take things. No, you can't do it at all, for sure. When the raspberries are in, get them before everybody else gets them. But one of the other things that I really love that we do there is Cooley Region Ecoscapes, Judd and Jared will come in and take care of a lot of maintenance every now and then when stuff is just not being picked when it needs to be picked. And then they'll bring it down to the Salvation Army, and we'll use it there. So none of the food ever gets wasted by any means. It always gets used in some way or another. But the more that we can get our community to come through there and grab food out of there and eat it, the better, because it's completely free to the community.
That's awesome. What a great resource. I'll be honest, I did not know about all of the things that you guys said. I knew like bits and pieces, but I feel like I'm learning a lot during this discussion and writing some of it down in notes. So I really appreciate all that you're sharing. Next, I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about what's happening now with your agency, maybe what's happened over, some of you have kind of touched on a little bit, like COVID, how maybe it impacted your agency last year, and maybe what's happening now, and now that things are starting to open up a little bit more, people are getting vaccinated, how that might be impacting what you're doing, or maybe it hasn't impacted your agency as much. Maybe you haven't seen that since gardens are outside, and that obviously is safer for people. But if you can touch on that at all, that would be great.
Should I go again? Okay, go ahead. Okay, yeah, I feel like in the gardening world, spring's always kind of the same. So we want to get the garden going. We need volunteers. And I've told a few people this, and it relates to COVID. We've had more groups come to our garden this year than all of last year. And that number is like, we've had 6 groups. That's more than all of last year. In a normal year, we would have 150 groups or more come to our garden. We had like 3 last year, but that was partly, we follow the county rules. We all know about COVID, I guess, right? You can't have groups. We were open every day last year because we're food related, that, grocery stores didn't close either. So last year, the challenge was to grow up with a lot less helpers. So I feel like this year people are wanting to get out. We're open to anyone can come by with no experience, or some people come with lots of experience, and we're open Monday through Saturday, and just come over and help. And we're open, there'll be a staff there 46 hours a week. So, by the way, today, no volunteers came. It's sort of typical. It's March and it's kind of muddy, right? So I think it's going to warm up. I heard there's a group in mid-April of the Turbo students, about 30 of them are going to come over. I don't know if 30, because I'm not sure if we're allowed to have that many, but if we keep our distance and wear our masks, then that's what we do, right? Everyone's used to it by now. And I don't know, I feel like that's the biggest challenge. I know there's a lot of hunger. A lot of people were laid off. And the demand for the food is way up. So I feel a little, commitment. We need to grow a lot of food. So this is opportunity. It's not just handing out the food. Ours is, we're growing together. So anyone is invited. I want to get the word out that we can keep you safe and spaced out. And anyone's welcome to come over. So that's all.
Well,
okay. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
With Grow, we did, because we're so connected to schools, when schools shut down last spring, a year ago, we were not able to do our usual programming. But we did still have some staff and interns and volunteers plant and then maintain the gardens, and they actually were beautiful this summer. So we we're fortunate to be very connected to the school district's nutrition program. And so as much as possible, we would try to harvest and then bring to the main kind of hub of where they would be making the school lunches that they were doing handout. They had free school lunch handout. over the summer and then into the fall. And so whenever we could, we would bring over that produce and they would integrate that into the lunches. And then also we had some days where we were able to kind of create bundles of produce that then we would hand out to whatever, however many first 100 that came or something like that, we would be able to give to families. So we were able to still, provide that produce, which was really important to us. We were kind of waiting in the fall. Okay, is it going to happen? And, again, this school was not in person. And so we weren't able to do that, but we have a great team and we pivoted and we created, how many? I think altogether, it ended up through the winter, we created about 18 videos that we would share out to the schools that we contract with. And so that was sent to teachers, and those teachers were able to then share that with their classes on Zoom, or assign it and say, you're supposed to watch this and that kind of thing. So we got some great feedback on that. Of course, it wasn't the same, but we were able to do that. All of our fundraising that was online or just canceled. So that was hard. And we're finding too with schools and funding and ourselves, that's just all around that's an issue. So we're feeling that a little bit going into this year as well, but we're hopeful. We're doing video lessons for March, and then we just are getting word that it looks like we're going to be able to be in person with kiddos starting now, maybe end of April and in March, or April and May. So we have some awesome interns and staff who are looking forward to being able to do that in person where they should be doing it. So, and doing it safely. So using all the protocols, will be masked and social distancing, but I think they're feeling a lot better about doing that. And outside is where we should be, right? Even during this time. So that's kind of how we adjusted with COVID and how we're kind of going into this year. And we'll talk a little bit more maybe about some of the events coming up in a little bit.
I could talk briefly a bit about last year. We had to cancel quite a bit of our environmental education programs. We work pretty closely with the school district of La Crosse. And of course, if the kids aren't in session, they're not coming on, in person, they're not coming on field trips here. So we were able to create a couple of, we are doing some programs virtually through Zoom calls and things like that. But what we ended up doing was transitioning into more of our camp type schedule. So we would always run what we call summer day camps in the summer, but we ended up doing it during the day or during the school year as well. So we called it nature school day camps, not to replace the school that they were getting, but just to enrich what they were doing. So they were doing Zoom in the morning, and then they would come here in the afternoon and do some activities and things related to school, but also nature and having fun. For our conservation crews, like you said, Julie, it's when you're outside, it's easier to be distant. So we would try that as much as possible with our crews. If they had to be close, they would wear masks. But really, with our crews, they come from all over the country. The crew members do, and so we had them go through a 2-week quarantine process where they wore masks around each other all the time until they became what we were calling a family group. So once we were sure they weren't infected, then they were in their own little bubble. As far as our garden folks, we just practiced our social distancing and masks when we could, but it's very easy to spread out in our garden. So we went through the year without any cases in our headquarters or our crews. So we were, whatever we were doing worked. So we're pretty happy about that. As far as right now, we are currently onboarding our spring crews, our spring work crew. We just put out our summer day camp schedule so people can sign up for summer day camps. And we are doing our nature school day camps now through the end of May. We realize that a lot of kids went back to school, but there's some that are still learning virtually. And so we wanted to continue to offer that as an option. And for our garden folks, we are hoping to onboard them as soon as possible. And then they have to finish up by August 31st. And that's part of an AmeriCorps stipulation, but I can get into that later.
I can talk about kind of what happened with COVID for us. I also just apologize if I'm smiling during the call. It's because my son is talking and singing over in the other room and it's just killing me. And so that's what's happening there. Anyways, I mean, COVID last summer, we really went into survival mode. So we didn't do really programming. And really as staffing side of things, our staffing got really cut back dramatically in last summer. Like I said, we were just in survival mode. And so we didn't do any programming in the food forest. Really, we were so fortunate to have Cooley and the relationship we have with them. They maintained the food forest for the entire summer, did those things, worked out a relationship with the city actually, and actually had the city taking care of that as they were also at that time, Cooley was taking care of the victory gardens or the creation of those. And so we were really fortunate in that way. And then also took care of a lot of the harvesting because that's actually one of the hardest things we have with the food forest is utilizing the food, getting rid of it, if you will. So we've done different things to bring it into the lobbies to try to get more people access to it. But so they helped out with a lot of that. A lot of that food went to the Salvation Army. So it's always a great resource and utilizing it there. And our thing, we just kind of maintained, if you will, over last summer and this year, we're not really sure just yet. The Y has been open since last June, and we have all of our programs for the most part happening again at the Y. And so we're very accustomed to what that looks like, but we don't know what our programming outside the walls is going to look like in the food forest. We have some ideas. We're just kind of waiting for more direction as we move along here, but we're hoping to come back to more of that program that we did in the past because it was one of the most beautiful things you would see often, at least how I viewed it. We have it on Wednesday night where very little marketing went into it. And you could have some nights, I kid you not, we had 80 people show up one night to a 2,000 square foot food forest to help be a part of things in there. And an evening that's a typical learn and grow night for us is a night that starts off with some yoga because Jared is a yogi and we'll start off the night with some yoga. And then there'll be music. Jared, or Judd, is a musician, so he knows a number of the musicians in town. And so there'll be some type of small group kind of musicians playing while they're, either doing a project in the food forest or just a lot of weed pulling. And it's just this really organic community feeling to the whole thing. And then, like I said, any food that's available that night, just people take it with them. So we're hoping to bring back some of that stuff, but again, we'll talk about it more. Dana will talk about it later on of what her hopes are for programming this summer when we get into that.
Yeah, I can just kind of sum off of that. Again, like since I'm so new, I really haven't seen how it's worked in the past. My past is really school nutrition, and I had a little garden there. We would do locally grown stuff that the students would grow, and then we would utilize it in our food service and our summer lunch programs. And I know that that's currently, we have summer lunch programs and also dinners for the kids. So I would love to get all of those kids outside and do some programming there like in the past. We also got this small grant for a couple of picnic tables. And I'm surprised Lee didn't mention that because I know he's really excited about it. But I'm really excited because right now we have some benches, but there's really not a place to bring a picnic or, just bring your family out just for a picnic and sit outside and just enjoy nature. Like Julie was talking about, everyone just wants to be outside right now and I don't blame them. So just kind of a different, change of scenery, so to say, beside your house. Families can take a walk there. So I just hope that a couple of picnic tables might bring in a couple more families, or walking by, just more welcoming, read a book, whatever it may be, bring a friend and play a game. We're just going to try to get as many people there and feeling comfortable as possible. And like Lee said, slowly bring in some programming to our school age, our summer program, and our community members as well. So hopefully we can get some really cool things going, and excited to see it go through. Now that COVID is a little, at least some feel safer.
Awesome. And that's kind of the perfect segue, because you started to talk about, where you see things moving forward. So that's kind of my next question, how can people support your agency moving forward? Whether it's volunteering, fundraising, events coming up, whatever ways you can see people supporting, or taking the food. Some of you said that it's hard to get rid of the food, whatever it might be. So whoever would like to answer that.
Go, since I was already chatting, but I just think it's so important to get the word out to everyone in the community that it's for everyone. It's not just for those that are members at the Y. I actually had a group from UWL reach out to me and ask if they could utilize the food forest they were putting together some little food packs during COVID for students. Kelsey's nodding. You could probably talk about it more. I mean, they just reached out to me, and I'm like, yes, please. Like, this is what I want. Like, I want people to utilize it. And it's so awesome that it's going to students in need. So yeah, that kind of things, just spreading the word about it. It's open to everybody. Come have coffee there with a friend, or do whatever, just as long as it brings you joy and, being out in nature.
Well, should I go? I feel.
Yes.
Can you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we're so much into volunteering. When someone said, "What could you do for our agency?" I mean, any nonprofit would say you could give us money if you want. We're always fundraising. I don't really work on that side of things, so I would be the other way. You can either give your money or your time. And I feel like everyone should have a place to volunteer. And we've had some amazing volunteers that they're almost too intimidating. We had a fellow who passed away, George Fulford, the Tomato Man. He came 6 days a week from 8 till 12 every week. Now, that's this crazy amount to volunteer, right? So I want everyone to know you don't have to do that. You could be a beginner and show up once for the whole year. You could show up once a month or once a week. And I didn't mention this earlier. Most of our people come at harvest time. We try to focus the harvesting Monday and Thursday, 3 to 5. Like tomorrow, come on over to the garden and help. And then you can pick whatever ready and take it home if you want. And then also Saturday morning, 8 to 12. We have 3 harvest times. And we also, that's when our classes are. So really most of our people come at those 3 times. If you want to come in the morning, you're welcome to come also. It'll just be, some people like it less crowded. In the morning, you could be the only person there. So, and you might wonder, what are we picking? We have beautiful spinach to pick right now. We have a hoop house. We've been picking it since January. And if you want to get into growing in a hoop house, it's really kind of exciting. Actually, we started picking in November, picked it every week. We're open in the winter now too. It's sort of past history. We're open 3 days a week in the winter. So, well, I just want to invite everyone to come by. And if you don't help here, help somewhere else and contribute to your community. And I always tell people you're helping to grow food for your community and for yourself. You don't have to be poor. You can take home food a little bit, or just whatever you can use. You're welcome to have some. So
Before we move on to the other agencies, I'm wondering, can people bring their families? Like, are kids allowed to come volunteer and help out? And then also, do you ever need like in-kind donations, like gardening tools or anything like that?
Oh yeah. We have a lot of tools. You could bring your own hand tools. I tell people they might want to bring their own gloves, because otherwise the gloves tend to get kind of dirty. Our community gloves, especially with COVID, you might, if you have your favorite gardening gloves, I would suggest that. Otherwise, just dress appropriately. We do have, dozens of hose and such. So you don't need tools, and certainly families. We've had, a group from 4-year-olds come as a group, 40 of them at a time. That would be kind of unusual. Like, what exactly can they do? That group actually planted potatoes in May, and then they came back and dug them out. Like, little kids can't dig out potatoes. So, but families with kids come, last year was a little off, but yeah, it could be like, we 2 years ago, we had a family from Trempealeau that came every Saturday. It was like a destination for them. And they had 2 kids and they just liked doing it a lot. And then they definitely got some food to take home. So yeah, it's all ages. I mean, the parents would have to supervise the younger ones. And we even have we have a children's garden, and there's a Boys and Girls Club. They can walk over to our garden because we're that close, and there's a gardening club. So they come over every Monday. Unfortunately, last year they were not allowed to come over. It was their call and they didn't come, but I heard they're coming back this year. So that'll be good. And yeah, our other kids class is Saturday morning at 11. So Saturdays are probably easier to come over than during the week if your kids are in school. But that is also why we say open late on Monday, and Thursday we're open till 6. We'll be open till 6 tomorrow night. So yeah, all ages and all experience levels are very welcome. And just come over and meet some people and see what we're doing. That's all.
Well, like Todd, we do, most of our funding comes from fundraising, donations, business sponsorships. And then we write for grants and that kind of thing. Schools do put in some of the money as well, but so, any kind of monetary donation is always appreciated. We will have some fundraisers coming up. And I might have Autumn, she can maybe talk about some of that. And then one of the biggest things that we feel like we have a pretty robust internship program. Throughout the years, we've been able to get some amazing college students, oftentimes from community and public health, but nutrition, even education. And they are volunteering their time. I mean, they may be getting credit sometimes, but oftentimes it's an experience. And so that is a big volunteer. And so maybe Autumn can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so GROW has a very robust internship program. We offer 3 different levels of internships. So there's preceptorships, and that's what I am. That's 40 hours a week for approximately 14, 15 weeks. And then we have 3 interns this semester that are doing 5 to 6 hours a week for 90 hours total. And they are all from UWL public health interns. They work mostly as a team. And then I work individually and then also have the chance to be a team lead for those 3 interns. So that's pretty cool. And then the last would be service learners.
And each semester, so we usually season, but each semester, even summer. And then also, I guess, yeah, do you want to maybe talk, Autumn, a little bit more about just some of the things we have coming up?
Yeah, so we have our growing generosity, and then we've got our garden lessons coming up with schools that have grow gardens. What else?
And then in
do we
May,
have?
we have a plant sale.
Oh yes, we do have a May plant sale. It's over
The
Mother's
plant
Day.
sale.
So we're planting and transplanting a lot for that right now. So it's over Mother's Day weekend. So everyone write that in their calendars.
Mhm. I think
Mhm.
it's the May 8th and 9th, right? And so it'll be
Yep.
at the greenhouse. And we are growing those right now. So that's a big way for people to support what we do, but then also be able to bring that back to their own home gardens and be able to grow there as well. And hope to have a little bit of education around that as well that day or those days. So
We've definitely bought plants from that sale for our garden, so thanks.
wonderful. Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, all
Yeah.
these groups here, like we all are so interconnected in terms of whether it's through history or just currently and doing similar things. So it's neat to be on the screen with all of you.
Well, I think our director of development would not be happy with me if I didn't mention that, yes, we do accept monetary donations. But what I really want to tell everybody about is our 300-hour AmeriCorps positions for the summertime. So we hire on 3, they're unpaid positions that they have to serve at least 300 hours of service. And then when they complete that service, they will receive an education award that you can use either towards future education or you can apply it towards qualified student loans. So these particular members, after serving 300 hours, would earn a little over $1,300 towards student loans. And then I also advertise that they get free organic produce that they grow, while they're working. Again, like Todd said, as much as you can use. So basically, to be an AmeriCorps member with us, you have to be at least 17 years old. Otherwise, any age can do AmeriCorps service. And if you are older and have maybe kids or grandkids, you can pass that education award down to them, which is kind of a cool perk. But the amount of service hours per week that these members would serve would depend on when they start. So I think the latest date is the end of May that they could possibly start, and that puts them at about 20 to 25 hours a week, which is probably the most that we would want for these people. So again, it's an unpaid position, but they do earn an education award. And we are hiring 3 members, and we are hoping to expand their range beyond our demonstration garden this year. So there might be some opportunities to work with the master gardeners that landscape our native pollinator gardens around the building. And then we also might try to hook them up with Friends of the Marsh, who are doing a lot of invasive species removal right now. And I know the city of La Crosse with the Victory Gardens are looking for extra help as well. And possibly any of your organizations, we could send them out for a few days. So the position's pretty wide open to get the service hours. Any questions about that? To become an
Awesome.
AmeriCorps member, you have to pass a background check, but that's all we've got.
That sounds like a very exciting opportunity, especially I don't know, to be able to be outside and then the free produce. Lots of great perks.
Yep.
For anyone.
any ability level, any age above or 17 or older. If you remember, like I said, when I started, I didn't really know anything about anything. So we learn by doing. And that's great.
Love it. Well, we're kind of near the end and we're running out of time, but I do want to give you guys a chance to, if there's anything that you didn't cover that you'd like to, or anything you'd like to reiterate that maybe you said, but maybe you feel like you could stress again about your agency or getting involved, feel free to chime in. Or if you have questions for one another.
I just can't echo enough times or say enough times that please stop by the food forest on the outside of the Y on King Street or on West Ave, and walk through and get raspberries and strawberries and apples and asparagus and aronia berries and elderberries and all those different things. And really, I say that in a way because we want more people to know about it. So the more people that interact and utilize this stuff out there, even if you're just grabbing an apple or grabbing a handful of raspberries, tell your friends that they can get stuff out of there. The more that happens, that's what we're driving for. Really, the food forest is a point right now that it does take care of a lot by itself. And so now the more we can get rid of food, the better.
I've seen it many times, but I've never stopped by, so I will now.
Yeah.
I do think it's neat. We talked about some of the overlap, but I think just even with our interns, like I know that some have, been with us, but then also been an AmeriCorps worker or, volunteered at the Kane Street Garden as nutrition, they are, if they're specializing in nutrition and learning about nutrition. So it's neat to, we all are doing similar things. And so in that way, just seeing that overlap too, and, having interns say, oh, this is what I learned at the Kane Street Garden, or, just that kind of thing. So I think that's important for us to continue to be able to communicate and, talk about ways that we, as organizations that do, some similar work, to keep communicating and figuring out ways that we can collaborate as well.
And we've really had a lot of help from WisCorps over the past recent years, that's for sure. We have a WisCorps person now, I guess, and she's one of the paid positions. She was in charge of our little greenhouse all winter, and she just did a great job with that. So thanks for doing that. And but I heard about the WisCorps crews. We've gotten a lot of help from them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm glad Emma's doing a great job out there.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for sharing your time tonight with us and all this great information. Like I said, the session is recorded. We will post it on the UGetConnected Facebook page. I'll send it out to you through an email. You can feel free to share it on your agency social media channels or through newsletter. I'll be sharing it through the Western Student Newsletter as well. And hopefully we can get the word out and you guys can get more volunteers, more donors, more people taking your food, taking advantage of that. I think that, there's a lot of people that just aren't aware. Like you said, they probably walk by that food forest all the time and have no idea that they can just take that, or they drive by the Kane Street garden and they know that it's there, but they don't really know that just anybody can volunteer and that you can take the food and that's what it's there for. So I think the more that we can educate and spread the word about all of your programs, the better the community will be. So thank you all for taking time and have a great evening.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.